Abanawa, Shabashimayim, Kodash, Haya, Shemka, Yahawa, Malakwatka, Taba'a Ratazaka, Haya, Aisha, Ba'arataza, Kawa, Haya, Bashimayim, Nathan Lanawa, Lakam, Kal Yawam, Wasalak Lanawa, Kawabwat Nawa, Kasalak Nawa, Kawabwati Nawa, Wala'a, Tabaya Nawa, Banasaya 1. Abo, Hawishai Nawa, Mayan, Rai Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwa, Waha Allah, Waha Tafa'aras, La'aiwalamium, Aman.
After this manner therefore pray ye, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, great glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakapadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Salutations to the elect, pushing this truth to the four corners of the earth and truth in its sincerity.
Kelly, this is reporting from NBC News now, suggesting that President Biden has now been presented with the options for U.S. cyber strikes that could take place inside Russia that would have a goal of slowing or halting the Russian advance into Ukraine. Now, this is not to say that these options have been taken or that President Biden would take any of these options, but NBC News is citing 4 sources familiar who say that among those options are disrupting internet connectivity across Russia, shutting off electric power, and tampering with railroad switches in order to hamper Russia's ability to resupply its forces in Ukraine. So offensive cyber strike capability inside Russia designed to slow down this advance. That is not something the United States has ever done before. This would be an entirely new form of warfare for the United States. And of course, there is no guarantee that President Biden will choose to enact any of those options. But as you can imagine, a whole range of options now being considered inside the White House as they look for ways to respond to this Russian aggression. And we will hear from the president shortly this afternoon. We may get some indication of the direction he intends to go. Of course, the concern on the part of all observers here is that threat of escalation. If the United States takes action, what does Russia do in response? What does the United States feel it has to do in response to that? And on and on and on, up the escalation ladder that we used to worry so much about during the Cold War, Kelly. That kind of worry is back on the table now.
This morning, President Biden meeting with NATO allies as he faces the greatest global test of his presidency so far, Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
The president unveiling sweeping new sanctions against Russia, including cutting off Russian banks and companies from the West, targeting Russia's defense industry by restricting technology exports, and freezing trillions of dollars of assets held by Russian elites with close ties to Putin. Still, the president stopping short of sanctioning Putin himself and revealing some European allies are divided over whether to cut off Russia from SWIFT, the international banking system in more than 200 countries. The president pressed by Peter Alexander whether he's done enough.
Respectfully, sir, what more are you waiting for?
The sanctions we've imposed exceed SWIFT. The sanctions we imposed exceed anything that's ever been done.
Republicans and even some Democrats stepping up their calls on the president to go even further with sanctions.
My advice to the president, both publicly and privately, is ratchet the sanctions all the way up as far as you can.
We need to go further. Putin should be sanctioned directly.
And while the White House initially said it hoped to deter Putin with the threat of sanctions, the president criticized for saying this on Thursday.
No one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening.
The president sending 7,000 additional troops to Germany to support NATO allies, but emphasizing American troops will not fight in Ukraine.
There is a complete rupture right now in U.S.-Russian relations if they continue on this path that they're on. And so it's going to be a cold day for Russia.
Now, the president was pressed at that press conference on Thursday why this latest round of sanctions don't target Putin directly. The president said that step is still on the table. Meanwhile, members of Congress are also under pressure to get a relief package passed to help Ukraine. Savannah.
All right, Kristen, thanks.
Respond to the announcements that if one cyber attack happens, if somebody hacks into a red light and makes people have a wreck, we are going to invoke Article 5, which means we have to then have NATO go to war with Russia and Ukraine, or for whatever country is attacked. To have that as the talking point for weeks, that Russia is now going to launch a cyber attack against the West, is preposterous, because that would then bring in Russia's enemies and have what Russia doesn't want to have, a war where it gets defeated with the West, a nuclear war. This is being done to look strong, to go in and to disarm Ukraine, because Russia for 20 years has let the West expand NATO 5 times. That's very clear. And Putin said 2 weeks ago and a week ago, he said, I'm not going to invade. Just say you're not going to invoke Article 5 and that you're not going to bring Ukraine into NATO. And they said, nope. Or the State Department tweeted images of large U.S. transport aircraft delivering pallets of very destructive anti-aircraft and anti-tank weapons. So the West went and started a fight. It's got one now, but you got to pull back and ask, who are the real forces here that are going to consolidate power and get more control? And it is the globalists. I've been making this point for months, but Zero Hedge, another excellent article, or was picked up from one of the other great sites out there, Alt Market, where they explain the globalists come out the winners in this crisis. And so I'm not on Russia's side. I'm not, quote, on Ukraine's side. I'm on America's side, common sense's side, and full spectrum analysis, understanding who the main players are. So when we come back, Putin upped the ante when they said, okay, any cyber attacks, we're going to attack you. Putin tells Biden imposing sanctions will be seen as an act of war. I've been on air more than 25 years.
The alert from DHS Cybersecurity shields up. Every organization in the United States is at risk from cyber threats, citing the potential for the Russian government to consider escalating its destabilizing actions. The governor of New York today opening a new statewide Joint Cyber Operations Command Center.
The threat of cyber attacks is very real. Our state and our cities will be taking a leading role in fortifying our defenses in the battlefield against cyber warfare.
Homeland Security urging every organization, business, and government agency to act now. Watch for signs of Russian activity in their networks, shore up cyber defenses, test backup systems, and ensure manual overrides are working for critical infrastructure. Cyber veterans fear an escalating cyber conflict.
It is possible that we get to the point where you have attacks against core infrastructure, attacks against infrastructure that is life critical, or even attempts to massively disrupt the economies of each country by our offensive forces.
It's happened before. Suspected Russian attacks have spread worldwide, taking down power grids, banks, businesses, even hospitals. U.S. government computers, food suppliers, and oil pipelines have been targeted. The challenge, a U.S. response risks escalating the cyber war.
Medium and small businesses are going to be targeted as well. And those kinds of infrastructures are not prepared to what the Russians, have in mind.
Security experts also warn Russia could launch dis- and misinformation campaigns, including deepfake videos targeting Western countries.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.